A tale of two seasons. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epic of belief, it was the epic of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven, we were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil in the superlative degree of comparison only. Charles Dickens started off A Tale of Two Cities with a bang with that one, huh? What an opening paragraph. There's so much that sticks out to me as I read that, most of which revolves around memories of scouring my little yellow book of notes that some guy named Cliff put together for me back in high school. After all, those little pop quizzes carried a lot of pop with them. At least they did for me. But fortunately for me, I got an A in that class without even understanding the books that we had to read. Still not sure how I pulled that one off, but I'm very thankful. But now I have almost 30 more years under my belt. Now I understand. Now I get the idea that Mr. Dickens was trying to convey. I see the picture he painted for us. And ultimately, it's a picture that could be painted today and every day that you and I have ever been alive. The world we live in is brutal. Why? Because it's a world that was plunged into curse way back at the beginning in that garden. Ever since that bad decision Adam and Eve made, mankind has been stuck trying to get the most out of this world on our own effort and with our own ideas. You see, that wasn't just a story about a hungry lady and her husband. That's an event that, like A Tale of Two Cities, is being played out all over the earth today. A struggle between two realities. People in every village and town and city and every nation are literally doing their best to get through their day today. They want purpose. They want a reason to exist. They want a reason to be needed by their family and friends. They will look for reasons to get up and go to work. And they will absolutely, most certainly, look for reasons to celebrate. Why? Because this world is tough. With all the bad news swirling around on the daily, we need reasons to celebrate. So we do. When your favorite team wins, you'll make a deal out of it and go to celebrate with your friends, especially when your favorite team wins the league championship led by your favorite 5-year-old. I remember those T-ball days. We celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, and promotions. And if there's no reason to celebrate, then no big deal. We'll just make up a day to celebrate something. Insert sweetest day right there. All joking aside, we love our special days. We look forward on the calendar to the next holiday, and not just because they're a day to take off work, although that is pretty cool. But no, they are days that mean something special. They represent a reason to take time and reflect on something. In July, we reflect on a group of bold and courageous men who risked their fortunes and even their lives to declare their collective freedom back in 1776. In May, we reflect on those brave men and women who gave their last full measure of devotion, as Lincoln said, on battlegrounds all over the world to protect that freedom. In January, we reflect on a man who dared to have a dream and declare it to a nation that needed to be a little more colorblind. And of course, every year on May 24th, I reflect on a day when I stood at the altar and said, I do to the prettiest girl in the world, who, by the way, is the sweetest every day, not just some Saturday in October. I know. I need to drop the whole sweetest day thing. It's not a real holiday, Hallmark. But the most important days are the holidays. They mean the most. Why? Because they're a time to reflect on the most important things. God set that precedent thousands of years ago as he instructed his people to set aside time to celebrate as they reflected on his goodness. In the springtime, they remembered the Passover and unleavened bread and its meaning, the first fruits and Pentecost. In the fall, they reflected and celebrated on the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles. Guys, Christmas is a time to celebrate the greatest gift the world has ever seen. John 3:16 says that God loved the world so much that he gave Jesus to us. Yet a world that has blinders on can't see the reason that we celebrate. They can't reflect on that beautiful occasion because they don't grasp the immense weight of it. And they certainly can't comprehend the joy that we Christians have because of it. And we shouldn't be surprised by that. There's a peace that you can't fully comprehend with your mind and true joy that you can't even put into words. And Christians have received those things through the gift of Jesus. The world hasn't received him. So what do? They try to imitate that celebration and grab hold of their own joy through limited means. Like most other examples in our society, they try to buy joy and transfer happiness in a wrapped box. Oh, sure, they say that money can't buy happiness, but they try to prove that statement wrong, one credit card swipe at a time. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not against gift giving. In fact, our family loves to bless each other. And I mean big time, okay? But it's sort of like a tale of two cities, isn't it? We are right here in a society that has a decision to make. The macro situations and circumstances surrounding each of us, they're all the same. But we have to make a decision about how we're going to handle ourselves in this society. What do we want to major on? What will we choose to reflect on? Dickens wrote about a time of major unrest in the late 1700s. His masterpiece was set in London and Paris. And unlike my friend Joey Tribbiani, I actually do understand that you don't really get to choose the two cities. Okay, it's London and Paris. But it could be rewritten in some ways and set in Lebanon, Ohio, my hometown, or your hometown. After all, don't you see unrest all around you? I sure do. But let's not forget the themes and the lessons that we learned from that great book. Those notes that Cliff put together for me, they showed me that the major themes were duality, revolution, and resurrection. Sounds like some of the themes to the Bible to me. And the quote I shared earlier, Mr. Dickens wrote a phrase that isn't well known, as we know, the best of times and worst of times. He said, it was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. He capitalized those two words, light and darkness. And I think there's more meaning there than most of us can comprehend. But let's try. Let's determine that we will choose a season of light over a season of darkness. And that is the point of this broadcast, my friends. We can choose good news. We can see our lives through the lens of the gospel of the Lord Jesus. And when we do that, everything else seems to fall in place, especially the meaning behind these holidays. You know, in many ways, we find ourselves in the best of times and the worst of times today. So during this Christmas season, we're confronted with a tale of two seasons. There's a very real reason for the season and a very pretend reason. When we take Jesus out of the mix, there's nothing left of a true eternal value upon which to reflect. There's no real joy when we take Christ out of Christmas. When we take the holy out of the holidays, we're just left with days. And I don't want just days. I want to remember and reflect on the real reason, not just during Christmas, but during every season. Most stores you visit during this time, they sell things with a quote on them. It says, Jesus is the reason for the season. And although I love that saying, I like my saying even more. Jesus is the reason for every season. And that, my friends, is good news. Thank you so much for watching our clip today. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel so you can be notified when new material comes out. And if you'd like to watch the entire episode of this podcast, you can click up here and do so. Thank you so much. And remember, Jesus is Lord, and you are complete in Him.